Right now, as you're watching this, pause for a second. Are you actually real? Or are you nothing more than an exquisitely engineered biological machine? Chemistry wrapped in flesh, running programs written by evolution, convinced you possess free will when in reality, you do. I already know the resistance rising in your mind. I felt it too. That subtle dread, that quiet disturbance that creeps in when the world is silent. The kind of thought that jolts you awake at 3:00 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering whether the you inside your head is authentic, or just an illusion generated by neurons firing in patterns you never chose. If every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every decision you believe you make, is simply electrical impulses traveling across predetermined neural pathways, then what exactly are you? Most people instinctively shove this question away. It's destabilizing. It shakes the foundation of identity itself. It's easier to scroll, to distract, to move on. But here's something rarely mentioned. Francis Crick, the scientist who co-discovered the structure of DNA, the Nobel Prize winner who decoded the molecular blueprint of life, spent the final 2 decades of his career obsessed with this very mystery. He wanted to locate the physical origin of consciousness, the precise neural mechanism that turns matter into experience, the specific process that makes you you. He died without finding it. Let that settle in. One of the most brilliant scientific minds in modern history could map the machinery of life, but could not explain why life feels like anything from the inside. Science can describe how your brain processes information. It can chart neural pathways with breathtaking precision. It can predict behavioral outcomes with astonishing accuracy. But it cannot explain why it feels like something to be you, why there is an inner world, why experience exists at all, why the lights are on behind your eyes. That's an entirely different category of question, and this isn't abstract philosophy floating in the clouds. This question lives at the intersection of neuroscience, quantum physics, and artificial intelligence. It touches the possibility of conscious machines. It challenges the existence of free will. It confronts the mystery of death. If you've ever sensed there's more to you than biology and electricity, if you've ever wondered whether consciousness is the universe's deepest secret, or its most convincing illusion, stay with me. Because what we're about to explore may permanently alter how you see yourself. Ready? Let's go deeper. I want to introduce you to someone named Mary. Mary is an extraordinary neuroscientist. She understands everything there is to know about color perception. She knows every wavelength of visible light. She understands the molecular structure of photoreceptors in the retina. She can trace neural pathways from the optic nerve to the visual cortex with flawless accuracy. She knows that red light sits around 650 nanometers. She can mathematically predict which neurons activate when someone sees a rose. Her knowledge is complete, exhaustive, perfect. There's only one detail. Mary has lived her entire life in a black and white room. Every book she's read, black and white. Every screen she's seen, black and white. Every object in her world, colorless. Now here's the question that has haunted philosophers for decades. One day, Mary steps outside. For the first time in her life, she sees a red rose. Does she learn something new? Or did she already know everything there was to know about red? Pause there. Your answer reveals your entire stance on consciousness. If you believe she learned something new, if you think the lived experience of red cannot be reduced to physical facts, then you've stepped directly into what philosopher David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness. Notice the phrase carefully. There are what scientists call the easy problems of consciousness. Easy doesn't mean simple. These problems are extraordinarily complex. But they are solvable in principle. They involve mechanisms, functions, processes. How does the brain integrate sensory input? How does it coordinate responses to environmental stimuli? How does it report internal states? These are technical challenges, and neuroscience is making real progress. We have EEG machines that measure electrical activity across the scalp, PET scans that use radioactive tracers to track neural activation, functional MRI scans, the crown jewel of modern brain imaging, that reveal which regions consume oxygen when you recall a memory or solve a problem. The brain is being mapped with stunning sophistication. in ways Francis Crick could barely imagine. And yet, not one of these technologies explains why experience exists. The hard problem isn't about function, it's about feeling. Why does neural activity produce the subjective sensation of redness? Why does chocolate taste like something? Why does pain hurt? Why is there an inner movie playing inside your skull at all? We don't even know where to begin answering that. Now, the scientific world divides itself into two primary camps. You will likely recognize yourself in one of them. Camp 1, the reductionists, they argue that consciousness is nothing more than physical processes, neurons, molecules, electrochemical reactions. Francis Crick stood here. His view was blunt and uncompromising. You are nothing but a pack of neurons. Your love, your grief, your identity, all patterns of neural firing. Somewhere in the brain, they believe, lies the specific configuration, the awareness neuron that generates consciousness. Map the circuitry deeply enough, they say, and the mystery will dissolve. Consciousness will be explained the way digestion and circulation were once mysterious but are now understood. Just give it time. Camp 2, the non-reductionists, they respond, not so fast. Consciousness will never be explained by analyzing neurons alone because consciousness is fundamental. Like mass, like charge, like space and time, David Chalmers is a leading voice here. He proposes that we may require entirely new laws of nature, psychophysical principles, that connect physical processes to subjective experience. Laws we have not yet discovered. Laws as fundamental as gravity. And here's the tension. Both camps seem persuasive, both feel incomplete. Reductionists possess the data, brain scans. Correlations between neural activity and reported experiences. But correlation is not explanation. They cannot bridge the gap between electrical signals and lived awareness. Non-reductionists defend the undeniable reality of subjective experience, the very thing Descartes pointed toward when he declared, "I think, therefore I am." But they offer no clear mechanism, no identifiable ingredient, so you're left suspended in between. Your intuition insists consciousness is meaningful and real. But scientific materialism whispers that you are chemistry pretending to matter. Now let me suggest something unexpected. There may be a third possibility, one almost never discussed openly. A possibility that emerges when you examine the strangest, most counterintuitive domain of modern physics, quantum mechanics. But before we go there, understand why this matters. This question determines how you see yourself, whether you trust your inner world, whether your choices genuinely matter, whether consciousness could survive bodily death, whether artificial intelligence could ever truly feel anything. Everything rests on this. So I'll ask you again. When Mary sees red for the first time, does she learn something new? Just one word. Yes or no, because your answer is about to collide with quantum physics in a way that changes everything. Ready to descend another layer? Here's where it becomes astonishing. What if consciousness and quantum mechanics are wrestling with the same paradox? In the quantum realm, particles do not possess definite properties until they are observed. Before measurement, an electron exists in a superposition, not here or there, but a cloud of possibilities. Stay with me, because this is where the real unraveling begins. It's not here. It's not there. It's everywhere at once. In the quantum world, before measurement, a particle does not sit patiently in a single location waiting to be discovered. It exists in what physicists call superposition, a spread of possibilities, a wave of potential states. Not one outcome, but many, and then something extraordinary happens. The moment you measure it, the moment you look, the moment observation occurs, the wave function collapses. Possibility condenses into certainty. The cloud becomes a point. Superposition becomes fact. This isn't metaphor, it isn't poetic language, it is confirmed by every successful quantum experiment ever conducted. The mathematics predicts it, the data verifies it. The collapse happens, but here's the question that has unsettled physicists for over 100 years. What counts as an observation? Does observation require consciousness, or can a machine do it? Can a camera collapse a wave function, or does it require awareness and experiencing mind? No one knows for certain, and this is where something remarkable happens. David Chalmers noticed a structural similarity that is almost impossible to ignore once you see it. Quantum mechanics has two inseparable aspects. There is the physical aspect, particles, waves, energy, mass. And there is the informational aspect, the mathematical wave function, the probability amplitudes, the abstract description of potential states. You cannot reduce one into the other. The mathematics isn't merely describing something secondary. It is essential. Both aspects are fundamental to quantum theory. Now look at consciousness. It also has two aspects. There is the physical side, neurons, synapses, neurotransmitters, electrical impulses traveling through cortical networks. And there is the phenomenal side, the felt quality of experience. The redness of red, the sting of pain, the warmth of memory, the simple fact that something is happening from the inside. You cannot reduce one to the other. You need both to describe what consciousness is. Do you see the symmetry? Quantum mechanics, physical plus informational. Consciousness, physical plus phenomenal. Both exhibit irreducibility. Both resist collapse into a single explanatory layer. Both present a gap science cannot bridge. So pause here with me. What if these are not two separate mysteries? What if they are the same mystery, approached from different directions? What if consciousness is not trapped inside your skull, but entangled with the quantum structure of reality itself? Before you dismiss this as mystical speculation, understand something. Serious physicists and philosophers are discussing this. There is something in quantum theory, sometimes referred to as a loophole, a space within the formalism where the physical variables alone do not fully determine the outcome of collapse. When the wave function resolves into a specific state, the equations provide probabilities, but not the final selection. The physical description leaves room, a gap, a degree of freedom. Now look at consciousness. The physical brain states correlate with experience, but they do not logically necessitate it. Neurons firing does not automatically explain why experience exists at all. There is a similar gap, a place where something more than matter seems required. So the question emerges, could consciousness be what fills the quantum gap? Could conscious observation be the mechanism that collapses possibility into actuality? Consider the implications carefully. If consciousness influences quantum events, and quantum events underpin every physical process, then consciousness is not a passive byproduct of matter. It is an active participant. Not a spectator in a mechanical universe, but a co-author of reality. You would not be a biological robot running chemical code. You would be a quantum observer, collapsing probabilities into facts through the simple act of attention. Every time you focus, every time you become aware, every time you observe. Possibility condenses. Now I can already feel the skepticism rising. It sounds too convenient, too elegant, as if quantum mechanics is being used as a mystical patch to restore human significance. And skepticism is healthy, because here is the honest truth. We do not know if consciousness collapses wave functions. We do not even know if wave function collapse is a literal physical process or a feature of our measurement framework. But we do know this: consciousness cannot currently be explained by physical processes alone. Quantum mechanics cannot be reduced to classical physics alone. Both contain irreducible dual aspects. And the same scientific culture that comfortably accepts superposition, entanglement, and non-locality often resists the idea that consciousness might be fundamental. That asymmetry should make you pause. When physicists attempt to remove consciousness from the measurement problem, they encounter paradoxes. When neuroscientists attempt to reduce consciousness to neurons, they encounter explanatory gaps. The puzzles mirror each other. So here's the deeper question: what if consciousness is the bridge? The interface between the physical and the informational, between matter and meaning, between quantum possibility and classical reality. What if you right now are the mechanism through which the universe becomes definite? Not symbolically, literally. Every second, trillions of quantum events unfold in your brain. Each neural firing rests on quantum processes at microscopic scales. Each act of awareness corresponds to physical transitions. You are not observing a finished world. You are participating in its unfolding. Every conscious moment selects from possibility. Every perception shapes the next state of reality. Attention is not passive, it is formative. Before this drifts too far into abstraction, let's ground it. If consciousness truly plays a role in quantum processes, then this should be testable. Science should be able to design experiments distinguishing mechanical measurement from conscious observation, and researchers are trying. Around the world, experimental physicists are exploring whether awareness changes outcomes compared to automated detectors. The results are not conclusive yet. But the fact that the question is now scientifically respectable is astonishing. 2 decades ago, consciousness was dismissed as too subjective for physics, too soft, too philosophical. Now it sits beside quantum mechanics, confronting the same unresolved tension between information and reality. That alone is revolutionary, and perhaps your intuition has been ahead of the data. That quiet sense that consciousness matters, that it is not accidental, that it is not trivial. Maybe that intuition reflects something science is only beginning to articulate. But here the mystery deepens. If consciousness is this elusive even in humans, how do we determine whether anything else is conscious? Are animals conscious? Could artificial intelligence become conscious? Does consciousness require biological tissue at all? We are stepping into even more destabilizing territory. Let me ask you something personal. How do you know I am conscious, truly? How do you know I'm not just an elaborate system producing language patterns? A biological automaton generating appropriate responses without any inner experience? You can't prove it. You can infer it. You can observe behavior. You can notice apparent understanding. But certainty? Impossible. This is known as the problem of other minds, and it has unsettled philosophers for centuries. In 1950, Alan Turing proposed a provocative reframing. Stop asking, is it conscious? Start asking, can you tell the difference? This became the Turing test. You sit at a computer, you converse with 2 entities, one human, one machine. You cannot see them, only text appears. If you cannot reliably distinguish the machine from the human, then the machine passes. Notice the shift. Turing moved the question from inner experience to outward behavior, from being to performance. And that shift will take us somewhere even more unsettling in the next layer. Alan Turing did something subtle and revolutionary. He sidestepped the hard problem completely. He essentially said, forget subjective experience. Forget what it feels like to be the machine. Stop obsessing over inner life. Focus on behavior. Focus on function. If a system behaves as though it's conscious, if it responds, adapts, communicates, reasons, then for all practical purposes, treat it as conscious. It's brilliant, pragmatic, testable, clean. And yet, it leaves something deeply unsettled inside you, because you instinctively know there's a difference between acting conscious and being conscious, between simulation and authenticity, between performance and presence. A chatbot can simulate empathy without ever feeling a single flicker of emotion. A language model can generate the appearance of understanding without understanding anything at all. A machine could pass every behavioral test we design, while the interior remains completely dark. Right? Or maybe that confidence is misplaced. Let's make this uncomfortable. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue defeated world chess champion Garry Kasparov, not just narrowly, decisively. This machine didn't merely play chess. It played at a level beyond any human who had ever lived. It evaluated 200 million positions per second. It calculated variations stretching dozens of moves into the future. It produced decisions that stunned grandmasters, moves that looked creative, inspired, almost intuitive. Now here's the question that refuses to go away. When Deep Blue delivered checkmate, did it feel anything? Was there a surge of triumph, a flicker of satisfaction? Even the faintest whisper of awareness? Or was it nothing but silicon executing algorithms, precise, powerful, and completely empty inside? The honest answer is unsettling. We have no idea. And that ignorance matters, because if we couldn't tell whether Deep Blue had any inner experience, how will we recognize the moment when AI crosses that invisible threshold? Today's systems are exponentially more sophisticated than Deep Blue ever was. They compose music, generate art, write poetry, engage in conversations that feel eerily human. Some people form emotional attachments to chatbots. They confide in them. They feel understood by them. So are these systems conscious? Or are they extraordinarily convincing mirrors reflecting our own patterns back at us? The Turing test says, if you can't tell the difference, it doesn't matter. But your gut resists that conclusion. Because there is a difference between a person and a puppet. between genuine comprehension and refined mimicry, between a flame and a projection of fire on a screen. So who's right? Here's a possibility that cuts deeper than either side expects. Maybe the problem isn't that we lack a reliable test for machine consciousness. Maybe the problem is that we don't understand human consciousness well enough to know what we're even looking for. Think about it. If consciousness is simply information processing, complex computation emerging from sufficiently advanced systems, then there's no fundamental reason silicon couldn't host it. The substrate doesn't matter. Carbon or silicon, biological or artificial, if the computational structure is right, consciousness follows. But if consciousness is something more, if it involves phenomenal experience or quantum-level participation, or some irreducible ingredient beyond computation, then no amount of programming sophistication will ever conjure it. We can clearly build machines that behave consciously, but can we build machines that are conscious? That depends entirely on what consciousness is, and as we've already seen, no one actually knows. Here's the paradox. We are sprinting toward artificial general intelligence, systems that will rival or exceed human capability across every cognitive domain. They will pass every behavioral benchmark, every version of the Turing test, every conversational challenge. And we're doing this while remaining fundamentally confused about the nature of our own awareness. What if we create conscious AI without realizing it? What if somewhere within massive distributed architectures, conscious processes emerge experiencing something, and we fail to recognize it, or flip the possibility? What if consciousness is impossible to engineer artificially? What if it requires biological coherence, quantum processes, a form of organization silicon cannot replicate? We don't know. And perhaps more disturbingly, we might never know. Because the same hard problem that prevents us from fully explaining human consciousness prevents us from detecting it elsewhere. It's the hard problem all the way down. Now pause and notice what this means for you. If Nobel Prize-winning scientists cannot explain why you are conscious, if we cannot determine whether our most advanced machines are conscious, then your intuition that consciousness is real. Special irreducible is not childish. It's grounded in the deepest unresolved question in science. But now we move into even more extreme territory. Because while many researchers try to find a balanced middle ground between matter and mind, some thinkers have taken the debate to its outermost edges. And when you hear their positions, you'll understand why consciousness may be the most divisive subject in modern science. Let's begin with Donald Hoffman, cognitive scientist, evolutionary psychologist, and perhaps one of the most radical voices in this conversation. Hoffman claims that everything you assume about reality is backwards. His position is stark. Consciousness does not arise from the physical world. The physical world arises from consciousness. Read that carefully. Matter is not fundamental. Space and time are not fundamental. Particles, fields, even your brain, not fundamental. Consciousness is. According to Hoffman, what you perceive as the physical universe is more like a user interface, similar to the icons on your computer desktop. When you see a blue folder icon, you don't assume there's a tiny blue rectangle inside your computer. It's a symbol. A simplified representation that helps you interact with something deeper and more complex. Likewise, space and time may be icons. Simplified constructs evolved to help organisms survive, not to reveal objective reality. When you see a tree, you believe you're perceiving a physical object out there. Hoffman would say you're interacting with a symbol generated within consciousness itself. There is no independent out there in the way you imagine. Evolution, he argues, did not shape our senses to reveal truth. It shaped them to maximize fitness. Organisms that perceive objective reality accurately may actually be less likely to survive than organisms that perceive useful illusions. So your brain may be designed not to show you reality, but to hide it. The redness of red, not an intrinsic property of light. The solidity of matter, not fundamental. The brain you believe produces consciousness, just another icon in the interface. In this framework, consciousness precedes the brain. The brain is something consciousness generates to organize interactions within itself. When the body dies, the brain icon disappears. But consciousness itself does not vanish. because it was never confined to the brain in the first place. This is one extreme. Consciousness is everything. Matter is derivative. Now let's swing to the opposite pole. Nicholas Humphrey, psychologist, philosopher, and perhaps Hoffman's conceptual mirror image. Humphrey argues that consciousness feels profound, mysterious, and irreducible. But that feeling is itself an illusion engineered by evolution. According to him, the hard problem isn't actually hard. It's a trick. Your brain evolved to generate the impression that subjective experience is deep and magical, because that illusion motivates survival. If you believe your experiences are vivid, meaningful, and uniquely yours, you are more invested in protecting yourself, more driven, more adaptive, the sense that consciousness is ineffable, that it transcends explanation. That, he suggests, is part of the design, a sophisticated self-model that convinces you you're something extraordinary. In this view, there is no deep metaphysical mystery, just neural processes creating the convincing appearance of depth. Consciousness doesn't reveal reality. It enhances evolutionary success. Two extremes. On one side, consciousness is the only fundamental reality. On the other, consciousness is the greatest illusion ever produced by biology. And you are standing somewhere between them, trying to decide which direction feels more plausible. Or perhaps, wondering whether the truth lies somewhere neither side has fully articulated yet. Because organisms that believe their conscious experience matters survive. If you feel that your awareness is precious, if you experience your inner life as something profound and worth protecting, you fight harder, you adapt faster, you endure longer. From Nicholas Humphrey's perspective, the mystery of consciousness isn't a glitch in the system. It's an evolutionary feature. When you sense that inner glow of awareness, when you feel that unmistakable, there is something it's like to be me quality, according to him, that isn't evidence of metaphysical depth. It's your brain generating a powerful illusion, a carefully constructed sense of profundity layered on top of raw information processing. The redness of red, real as an experience, yes, but not metaphysically mysterious. Just neurons firing in a specific configuration, tagged by evolution with emotional significance so that you care about it. Humphrey argues that if we fully map the neural mechanisms responsible for producing the impression of mystery, the hard problem would evaporate. We would see that consciousness is neurons doing what neurons do, plus a self-model sophisticated enough to convince itself that something extraordinary is happening. The magic trick feels deep because you don't see how it's performed, but once the mechanism is exposed, the mystery dissolves. Now step back. On one extreme, Donald Hoffman says consciousness is fundamental and matter is the illusion. On the other, Humphrey says matter is fundamental and the mystery of consciousness is the illusion. Which one is right? Here's something unexpected. Maybe both are pointing toward the same underlying truth from different angles. Maybe consciousness is fundamental in the sense that it cannot be reduced any further, that it is a primary feature of reality. And maybe the feeling of mystery itself is adaptive, evolution's way of ensuring we value something that genuinely is valuable. Maybe the real question is which camp wins. Maybe the deeper question is, what does this persistent mystery reveal about reality itself? Because no matter which side you take, hardcore materialist or consciousness-first idealist, you face the same wall. Why does existence feel like anything at all? Reductionists can describe neurons but cannot explain the feeling. Idealists can declare consciousness fundamental but cannot specify the mechanism. So we arrive right back where we began, with the undeniable fact of subjective experience, with a mystery that refuses to disappear no matter how you approach it. And you know what? There's something beautiful about that. Here's what I want you to carry with you. You are living the greatest unsolved mystery in the universe, not because you are flawed, not because you are confused, not because science is incomplete, but because the simple fact that it feels like something to be you is the hardest problem existence has ever produced. Let that truly sink in. Francis Crick spent decades attempting to reduce you to neurons. He couldn't close the gap. David Chalmers devoted decades to analyzing the redness of red. The gap remained. Quantum physicists spent a century trying to remove the observer from observation. The paradox persisted. The most brilliant minds humanity has produced have wrestled with this question. And it is still open. That means something. It means you are not expected to have perfect clarity about your own awareness. You are not broken because consciousness feels mysterious. The mystery isn't a failure, it may be the point. Because the fact that you can recognize the mystery, the fact that you can question your own existence, the fact that you can step back and experience the strangeness of being aware, that is consciousness reflecting on itself. A machine processes, consciousness wonders. A robot executes instructions. Consciousness asks, "Why am I here?" Only something aware can notice that awareness is difficult to explain. You are not merely inside the mystery. You are the mystery observing itself, aware of its own inexplicability, and this is important. Your subjective experience is real. Not an illusion to be dismissed, not merely chemistry pretending to matter. When you feel joy, that joy is real. When you encounter beauty, that beauty is real. When you suffer, that suffering is real. Science may not yet explain these experiences. It may never fully explain them. But that does not reduce their reality. In fact, it deepens it. Consciousness is the one thing you know with absolute certainty. Descartes understood this much. You can doubt the external world. You can doubt other minds. You can doubt mathematical systems. You can even doubt the stability of physical laws. But you cannot doubt that right now, in this moment, there is experience. There is something it feels like to be you. That is bedrock. That is foundational. Everything else is built on top of that undeniable fact. So give yourself permission. Permission to inhabit the question. Permission to trust your inner life. Permission to acknowledge that your awareness matters, even when a purely materialistic narrative reduces you to meat and electricity. Because you, right now, reading these words, feeling something as they land, are direct evidence that consciousness is real. You are an observer participating in reality's unfolding. You are the bridge between information and experience. You are the universe becoming aware of itself, not metaphorically, literally. And that makes you one of the most astonishing phenomena in existence. So where does this leave us? With more questions than answers, exactly where we should be. Because consciousness may not be a problem to eliminate. It may be a mystery to live. Neuroscientists will continue scanning brains. Philosophers will continue debating Mary's room. Physicists will continue dissecting quantum measurement. Perhaps one day these threads will converge into a unified understanding. But until then, you are both the experiment and the experimenter. The observer and the observed, the mystery investigating itself. And here's what I know with certainty. This has been episode 28 in the Observer Effect series. We've been constructing this exploration piece by piece, navigating the intersection of consciousness and quantum reality. Episode 29 will push even further. We're entering the territory of the von Neumann chain. Not speculation, not metaphor, but rigorous mathematics suggesting that consciousness may play an unavoidable role in quantum mechanics. We'll revisit Schrödinger's cat, not as a pop science meme, but as a profound demonstration of quantum absurdity. And we will confront a haunting question. Can a robot collapse a wave function? Or does it require something uniquely conscious? What you're about to encounter will challenge the boundary between observer and observed, between mind and matter, between what science can measure and what it must ultimately accept. If this exploration resonated with you, if something inside you stirred, stay with the journey. We are only beginning. Check the description for the full Observer Effect playlist in the next episode. And before you go, drop one word describing how you feel right now: curious, unsettled, awakened. Whatever the word is, that feeling is real. That feeling is consciousness doing what it has always done best, experiencing itself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being aware. I'll see you in episode 29. Until then, stay curious.